The shuttle doors closed with a soft hiss, sealing Lieutenant Commander Kate Morrison inside with 12 alien delegates. She looked around the cabin, counting the empty seats. 7 were open, but none of the aliens offered her one. Instead, they turned away when she made eye contact. Kate wore her standard human military uniform. The dark blue fabric was clean but showed signs of wear. Her boots were polished but scuffed from years of service. The aliens wore bright ceremonial robes and shining armor that caught the cabin lights. Next to them, she looked plain and ordinary. The Zilani ambassador sat in the front row. His skin was pale green and his eyes were large and black. When Kate walked toward an empty seat beside him, he quickly placed his bag on the cushion. "These seats are for real military leaders," he said. Without looking at her, his voice carried across the cabin, making sure everyone heard. Kate stopped walking. She studied his face for a moment, then nodded. "I understand," she said quietly. She turned and walked to the back of the shuttle where a small bench sat near the cargo area. A Krillian general with red scales covering his arms laughed. "Look at her uniform. Humans still use fabric instead of smart materials. Their whole military is decades behind the rest of us." Other aliens joined his laughter. Kate settled onto the bench and pulled out a small data pad. The Altarian captain shook her head. "I heard they only have 3 ships in their entire fleet." 3 ships. My homeworld has more vessels in our training academy." She spoke loudly enough for Kate to hear. The human woman did not look up from her reading. "What do they even do? In battles?" asked a hegemony officer. His voice was deep and rumbling. "Their weapons shoot metal bullets like ancient hunters. No energy beams, no plasma rounds, just chunks of metal flying through space." Kate scrolled through tactical reports on her data pad. The screen showed fleet movements and supply chains across 12 star systems. She made notes in the margins with a stylus. Her movements were calm and steady, as if the conversation around her meant nothing. The Zilani ambassador turned in his seat to face the other delegates. "Humans fight with explosives that they have to carry by hand. Chemical bombs that blow up when they want them to, like throwing rocks at starships." More laughter filled the cabin. "Their ground troops use vehicles with wheels," added the Krillian general. "Wheels that touch the dirt, not hover platforms or gravity drives. They drive on the ground like primitive creatures." He made exaggerated driving motions with his clawed hands. Kate turned a page on her data pad. The new screen showed supply, depot locations, and defensive positions. She highlighted several key points and made more notes. A small smile crossed her face for just a moment, then disappeared. The shuttle pilot announced they would reach Kepler Station in 30 minutes. The aliens began discussing the upcoming diplomatic summit. They talked about trade agreements and territory disputes. They mentioned the threat of vanguard attacks on outer colonies. "At least we do not have to worry about human opinions on military strategy," said the hegemony officer. "They have no experience with real warfare, just small conflicts on their single planet." Kate closed her datapad and looked out the small window beside her bench. Stars moved past in streaks of light as the shuttle traveled through hyperspace. She reached into her jacket and touched a sealed envelope. The paper crinkled under her fingers. Inside were orders that would change everything, but the aliens did not need to know that yet. The Altarian captain stood and walked to the refreshment station. She poured herself a drink from a silver container. "I wonder why the Council even invited humans to this summit. They bring nothing to our alliance. No advanced technology, no powerful fleets, no useful knowledge." "Politics," replied the Zilani ambassador. "The Council wants to appear fair to all species. Even the weak ones get a voice, even if nobody listens to what they say." Kate opened her datapad again and switched to a new file. This one contained detailed profiles of every alien species represented on the shuttle. She knew their military strengths, their weaknesses, their preferred tactics, and their psychological patterns. She had spent months studying them. The Krillian general noticed her reading. What could a human possibly be studying that matters to real soldiers? He stood and walked toward her bench. The other aliens watched with interest. Kate looked up from her screen. Battle reports, she said simply. Whose battles? The general's red scales shifted color slightly, showing his amusement. Everyone's, Kate replied. She turned the datapad so he could see the screen. It showed a detailed analysis of Krillian fleet formations from their last engagement with pirates. The general's expression changed. His scales darkened. Where did you get this information? Public records, Kate said. Most species share their victories. They like others to know how strong they are. She turned the datapad back toward herself. It makes for interesting reading. The general returned to his seat without another word. Kate continued studying her files. She read about Zilani hit-and-run tactics, hegemony shield formations, and Altarian precision strikes. Each species had patterns they followed, traditions they honored, and rules they never broke. That would be their weakness when the real fighting started. The shuttle began to slow as it approached Kepler Station. Through the windows, the massive structure grew larger. Docking bays and communication arrays stretched in all directions. Thousands of ships moved around the station like insects around a bright light. Kate put away her datapad and checked her uniform. Everything was straight and proper. She touched the sealed envelope one more time, feeling the weight of the orders inside. Soon, very soon, these aliens would learn what human soldiers could really do. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. The aliens gathered their belongings and prepared to leave. None of them looked at Kate as they filed toward the exit. She waited until they were all gone, then stood and followed them into the station. Kate followed the group of aliens through the station corridors. The walls were white metal with blue lights running along the edges. Hundreds of beings from different worlds moved past them. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like walking plants. All of them seemed to have somewhere important to go. A station officer with silver skin met them at the main desk. He held a datapad and began reading names. Ambassador Thexkar, you have been assigned to Suite Level 7. General Vexthon, Suite Level 6. Captain Lithara, Suite Level 5. The aliens nodded and collected their room cards. Kate waited, as each alien received their assignment. The silver officer worked his way down the list. Finally, he looked at her. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, you have been assigned to quarters on Level 2. He handed her a plain metal card. The Zilani ambassador looked surprised. Level 2? That is where junior staff stay. Surely there has been a mistake. The silver officer checked his datapad again. No mistake. Level 2, room 247. He turned to help the next group of arrivals. Kate took her card without complaint. Thank you, she said to the officer. She picked up her small bag and walked toward the lift. Behind her, she heard the aliens talking in low voices. Level 2 is near the maintenance sections, said the Krillian general. They put her with the mechanics and cargo handlers. Perhaps that is where humans belong, replied the hegemony officer. Kate pressed the button for Level 2 and waited as the lift moved down. The doors opened to reveal a narrow hallway with gray walls. Her room was small with a single bed, a desk, and a tiny bathroom. She set her bag on the desk and looked around. The room was clean but basic. No decorations, no extra space, no view of the stars. She sat on the bed and opened her datapad again. New messages had arrived during the shuttle trip. One was marked urgent with high security codes. Kate entered her passwords and read the contents. Her expression did not change, but her fingers tightened slightly on the device. 2 hours later, Kate made her way to the main ceremony hall. The room was huge with a curved ceiling covered in lights that looked like stars. Hundreds of beings filled the space, all dressed in their finest clothes and uniforms. Kate found a spot near the back wall where she could see everything. Fleet Admiral Zeftai took the stage. He was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. His uniform was covered in medals and ribbons from dozens of campaigns. The crowd became quiet as he began to speak. Welcome, representatives of the Galactic Alliance, his voice boomed through speakers. We gather here to discuss the security of our worlds and the protection of our people. For generations, the advanced civilizations of this galaxy have worked together to maintain peace. Kate listened carefully. She noticed how the Admiral's eyes moved across the crowd, pausing on certain groups but never looking toward the back where she stood. Some species have proven their worth through centuries of service, the Admiral continued. They have shown courage in battle, wisdom in strategy, and dedication to our common cause. Applause filled the room. The alien delegates from the shuttle smiled and nodded to each other. Admiral HFY paused and looked directly at Kate. Other species have yet to prove their value beyond basic survival. They must demonstrate that they can contribute more than just warm bodies and primitive weapons. Several beings in the audience turned to look at her. Kate kept her expression neutral. The ceremony continued with speeches from other military leaders. Each one praised the advanced civilizations and their contributions to galactic defense. They talked about energy shields, plasma cannons, and gravity bombs. They mentioned fleet formations that could destroy entire solar systems. Kate made mental notes about everything she heard. Ship numbers, weapon capabilities, tactical preferences. The aliens were telling her exactly how they fought, thinking she was too primitive to understand the importance of the information. After the ceremony, Kate walked toward the exit. A young Altarian officer stumbled in front of her, dropping his ceremonial weapon. The device looked like a sword made of pure energy, but it was heavy and awkward in his hands. Kate moved quickly and caught it before it hit the floor. "Thank you," the young officer said. His name tag read, Ensign Lithara. Kate handed him the weapon, noting how her reflexes had been fast enough to surprise several nearby officers. "Be careful with that," Kate said. "Energy weapons can be dangerous if they malfunction." Lithara nodded. "I am still learning to use it. These ceremonial versions are heavier than the standard issue." He secured the weapon to his belt more carefully. Kate smiled slightly. "Practice makes perfect." She walked away, leaving the young ensign looking puzzled by her friendly response. The next morning brought the first strategic planning session. Kate arrived early and found a seat in the back row. The room filled with military officers from across the galaxy. Maps and star charts covered the walls, showing territory controlled by the Alliance and areas threatened by enemy forces. Chairman Veltar called the meeting to order. He was a hegemony leader with gray skin and 6 eyes arranged around his head. "We will begin with reports from each sector command," he announced. "Admiral HFY will present the fleet status." The Admiral stood and activated a holographic display. It showed the positions of Alliance fleets throughout the galaxy. Red markers indicated enemy activity, while blue markers showed friendly forces. Kate studied the display carefully, memorizing the positions and numbers. "Our defensive lines remain strong," the Admiral reported. "However, we have detected increased enemy scout activity in the outer rim sectors. The Vanguard may be planning something." Kate raised her hand. "Chairman Veltar, may I present humanity's defensive analysis?" The room became quiet. Several officers turned to stare at her. Chairman Veltar's 6 eyes focused on her location. "Junior species should observe before attempting to contribute," he said firmly. "You may submit a written report for review." Kate lowered her hand. "Understood, sir." She settled back in her chair and continued watching the presentation. Her jaw tightened slightly, but she made no other sign of reaction. The meeting continued for 3 hours. Kate listened to every word, recorded every detail, and analyzed every piece of information shared. While the other officers discussed their advanced strategies, she was learning their weaknesses. That evening, most of the alien officers attended an exclusive reception on the upper levels. Kate was not invited. She spent the time in her small room, reading intelligence reports and tactical assessments. The data painted a clear picture of the Alliance's strengths and problems. Her datapad chimed with another secure message. This one contained updated orders and new intelligence about enemy movements. Kate read it twice, then deleted the message. According to security protocols, soon, very soon, these aliens would need her help. And when that time came, they would finally understand what human soldiers could really do. Kate was reading tactical reports in her small room when the warning sirens began. The sound was loud and sharp, cutting through the station's normal hum of activity. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside her door. She grabbed her datapad, and rushed toward the command center. Emergency announcements echoed through the station speakers. All military personnel report to stations immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Kate ran through the hallways as other officers hurried in the same direction. The command center was chaos. Officers from dozens of species crowded around display screens that showed radar readings and sensor data. Admiral HFY stood at the main console, his 4 arms moving quickly across different control panels. His blue skin had turned darker, showing his stress. "Report," the Admiral shouted over the noise. A sensor operator with tentacles instead of arms called out readings. 12 large contacts approaching from Sector 7. Speed matches Vanguard dreadnoughts. Estimated arrival time is 4 hours. The room became quiet for a moment. Every officer knew what Vanguard dreadnoughts meant. The mechanical enemy had not been seen for years, but when they appeared, entire worlds died. Their ships were massive and nearly impossible to destroy. General Vexthon pushed through the crowd to reach the main display. His red scales were bright with excitement and fear. 12 dreadnoughts? That is enough firepower to destroy this entire station and every ship in the system. Kate found a spot near the wall where she could see and hear everything. She pulled out her datapad and began taking notes. Ship positions, weapon capabilities, defensive options. The aliens were focused on the immediate threat, but she was already thinking several steps ahead. Admiral HFY activated the station's long-range communications. "Send emergency signals to all Alliance fleets. We need every available ship here immediately." The communication officer began sending the messages, but Kate knew it would take time for help to arrive. Chairman Veltar entered the command center with his security team. His 6 eyes moved quickly across the displays, taking in the situation. "Admiral, what are our current defensive capabilities?" "We have 18 ships in the system," the Admiral replied. 6 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 4 support vessels. The station has defensive weapons, but they are not designed to fight Vanguard dreadnoughts. Kate did quick calculations in her head. 18 ships against 12 Vanguard dreadnoughts was not good odds. The mechanical enemy built their ships to be stronger and faster than anything the Alliance could field. Previous battles had shown that it usually took 3 or 4 Alliance ships to destroy 1 Vanguard vessel. Captain Lithara studied the sensor readings. Their formation is standard Vanguard attack pattern. Heavy ships in front, support vessels behind. They will try to break through our defenses with overwhelming force. "We need to form a defensive line," said General Vexthon. "Use the cruisers as anchor points and fill the gaps with destroyers. It is our best chance to hold them off until reinforcements arrive." Other officers nodded and began planning the formation. Kate listened to their strategies and felt a growing sense of concern. They were thinking like traditional military commanders, using tactics that had worked against other species. But the Vanguard was different. "Admiral," called out the sensor operator, "the enemy ships are increasing speed. New arrival time is 3 hours. Kate stepped forward slightly, but remained near the wall. She had studied every Vanguard battle in the Alliance database. The mechanical enemy learned from each encounter, adapting their tactics to counter whatever strategies the Alliance used. Standard formations and predictable movements were exactly what they expected. Admiral HFY began assigning ship positions. The USS Triumph will take point position. Zelani vessels will form the right flank. Hegemony ships will anchor the left side. He looked around the room. Any other suggestions? Several officers offered modifications to the plan. Move this ship here. Adjust that formation there. All of their ideas followed the same basic pattern that had been used in dozens of previous battles. Kate could see the flaws in their thinking, but she remained silent. "What about hit-and-run tactics?" suggested Captain Lithara. "Small groups could attack from different angles, force them to split their attention." "The Vanguard adapt too quickly," replied General Vexthon. "By the second attack wave, they would have counters ready for our movements. We need sustained firepower, not clever tricks." Kate pulled up historical battle data on her datapad. Every major engagement with the Vanguard followed the same pattern. Alliance forces used their best strategies, fought bravely, and usually lost. The mechanical enemy's ability to learn and adapt made traditional tactics nearly useless. Reinforcements. From the nearest fleet will arrive in 6 hours, reported the communication officer. Admiral Kethmore is bringing 2 battle groups, but they cannot get here faster. Admiral Zeftai looked at the tactical display with growing frustration. 6 hours. We need to hold for 6 hours against 12 dreadnoughts with only 18 ships. He turned to address the room. Does anyone have ideas that might improve our chances? Kate felt all her training and experience pushing her to speak up. She had spent months studying alliance tactics and vanguard responses. She could see patterns that the aliens missed, weaknesses in the enemy approach that could be exploited. But she also remembered the dismissal she had received at every previous meeting. A young hegemony officer raised his hand. Sir, what if we concentrate all our firepower on one target at a time? Focus everything on the lead ship and try to break their formation. The vanguard will compensate, replied Admiral Zeftai. They will adjust their formation to protect damaged vessels. We have tried that approach before. Kate looked around the room at the worried faces. These officers were brave and intelligent, but they were thinking inside the boundaries of their training. They had rules about how battles should be fought, traditions about honor and tactics that went back generations. The vanguard had no such limitations. Sir, Kate said quietly, raising her hand. The room became quieter as officers noticed her, speaking. Admiral Zeftai looked in her direction with visible reluctance. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, sir, if I may suggest an alternative approach. Kate stepped forward slightly, her datapad held ready with the information she had been gathering. Several officers looked annoyed at the interruption. General Vexthon made a dismissive gesture. We do not have time for amateur theories. Admiral, Zeftai hesitated. Kate could see the conflict in his expression. He clearly did not want to hear from a human, especially not in front of his senior officers. But desperation was beginning to override his prejudices. The vanguard will be here. In 3 hours, Kate continued. Traditional tactics have failed against them in every major engagement. Maybe it is time to try something different. Chairman Veltar spoke from across the room. Admiral, we should listen to all options. The situation is critical. Admiral Zeftai looked around at his officers, then back at Kate. Speak quickly, Lieutenant Commander, but make it worthwhile. Kate walked toward the main tactical display, her confidence growing with each step. Around her, alien officers who had ignored her for days were about to learn why humanity deserved a place in the galaxy. Kate walked to the main holographic display showing the approaching vanguard fleet. The 12 massive ships appeared as red dots moving steadily toward the station. She touched the control panel, and the view changed to show previous battle recordings. The vanguard learned from every engagement, Kate began, her voice clear and steady. They record our tactics, analyze our movements, and develop counters for our strategies. That is why standard formations always fail against them. Admiral Zeftai crossed 2 of his forearms. We know this already. It is why we must use overwhelming force before they can adapt. Kate shook her head. Overwhelming force is still a predictable strategy. Watch this. She played a recording from the Battle of Altair Prime. Alliance ships formed a classic battle line and charged the vanguard fleet. The mechanical ships quickly repositioned to counter the attack. See how they respond? Kate pointed to the display. The vanguard moved into defensive formation exactly 90 seconds after our ships began their approach. They had calculated the optimal counter strategy before the battle even started. General Vexithon stepped closer to the display. Then what? Do you suggest? Random attacks with no coordination? Not random, Kate replied. Unpredictable. She switched to a new screen showing human military history. Humans have fought wars against other humans for thousands of years. Our enemies could think just like us, adapt just like us, and predict our moves just like us. The alien officers looked confused. Captain Lithara spoke up. How is that relevant? To fighting machines? Kate smiled slightly. Because we learn to fight enemies who are as smart as we are. We develop tactics that do not follow normal patterns. We use deception, false retreats, and strategies that seem to make no sense. She manipulated the display to show the current vanguard formation. Look at their approach vector. They expect us to form a defensive line here. Kate highlighted the area where Alliance ships would normally position themselves. Instead, we should do this. The display changed to show Kate's proposed battle plan. Alliance ships were scattered in seemingly random positions, some moving toward the enemy, others moving away. Several ships appeared to be retreating before the battle even started. Admiral Zeftai studied the formation with growing confusion. This makes no tactical sense. Ships are isolated, communication lines are broken, and half the fleet appears to be running away. Exactly, Kate said. The Vanguard will analyze this formation and find no logical pattern. Their computers will struggle to predict what we are trying to do, because we are doing several contradictory things at once. She zoomed in on specific ship positions. The USS Liberty appears to be retreating, but it is actually moving to attack position behind this asteroid field. The Zelani destroyers look scattered, but they are forming a hidden envelopment pattern that the Vanguard cannot see from their angle. Chairman Veltar moved closer to the display. Continue your explanation, Lieutenant Commander. Kate highlighted different phases of the battle plan. Phase 1, we appear to retreat in disorder. The Vanguard will advance confidently, expecting easy targets. Phase 2, our retreating ships suddenly turn and attack from unexpected angles. Phase 3, while they adapt to the first surprise, we hit them with the second wave from completely different directions. What happens when they adapt to these tactics? Asked General Vexthon. That is the beauty of human-style warfare, Kate replied. We never repeat the same pattern twice. Every move leads to the next unpredictable move. The Vanguard computers will be constantly recalculating, never able to get ahead of our strategy. She brought up detailed ship assignments. Captain Morrison in the USS Defiance will lead the false retreat. Her ship is fast enough to escape if the Vanguard pursue too aggressively. The hegemony cruisers will hide behind the station until the signal for Phase 2. Admiral Zeftai examined the plan more carefully. You want our heaviest ships to hide while light vessels attack first? That violates every principle of fleet combat. Which is exactly why it will work, Kate said. The Vanguard expect heavy ships to lead attacks. When they see destroyers approaching alone, they will assume it is either desperation or stupidity. They will not calculate for a coordinated deception. She pulled up psychological profiles of Vanguard behavior patterns. Machine intelligence has limitations. It can process vast amounts of data, but it struggles with true randomness and illogical choices. Human commanders make decisions that seem wrong but turn out to be right. Captain Lythara looked at the ship assignments. You have assigned specific roles to every vessel, but the timing seems impossible to coordinate. Kate nodded. Traditional coordination, yes. But humans train for something called adaptive leadership. Each ship captain makes independent decisions based on battlefield conditions. No rigid timeline, no fixed signals. Everyone responds to what they see happening. That sounds like chaos, said General Vexthon. Controlled chaos, Kate corrected. Every human military officer learns to think independently while working toward a common goal. We call it decentralized command structure. The Vanguard cannot predict our moves because we do not predetermine all our moves. She showed examples from human military training. Human soldiers practice fighting in small groups without communication. They learn to read situations and make good decisions without orders from commanders. This training makes us very effective against enemies who try to predict our behavior. Admiral Zeftai was quiet for several minutes, studying the battle plan from different angles. This strategy requires ship commanders to act without clear orders. Most species do not train for such independence, but they can learn quickly, Kate said. The basic principle is simple. Do the unexpected thing, but make sure it helps achieve the mission goal. Attack when you should retreat. Retreat when you should attack, but always work toward defeating the enemy. She highlighted weak points in the Vanguard formation that traditional tactics would miss. Their ships are positioned to counter standard alliance strategies. They have not prepared for asymmetric warfare or psychological operations. We can exploit these blind spots. Chairman Veltar spoke to Admiral Zeftai. Admiral, the lieutenant. Commander's analysis appears sound. Do we have better alternatives? The Admiral looked around the room at his officers. Several were nodding slowly as they began to understand Kate's approach. Others still looked skeptical, but desperation was overcoming their doubts. The Vanguard will arrive in 2 hours, Admiral HFY said finally. We do not have time to completely retrain our commanders in human tactics. Kate pulled out her datapad and connected it to the main system. I have detailed instructions for each ship type and suggested responses to different Vanguard reactions. The basic principles can be explained quickly to experienced officers. She looked around the room at faces that had ignored her for days. Humans have one advantage in warfare that no other species has developed. We are completely unpredictable when we need to be. Today, that unpredictability might save all of us. Admiral HFY straightened his uniform and looked directly at Kate. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, I am placing you in tactical command of this operation. Explain your strategy to the fleet commanders. The room erupted in surprised voices, but Kate was already moving to the communication console. The woman they had refused a seat was about to save their lives. Kate stood at the main command console as the Vanguard fleet appeared on the long-range sensors. 12 massive ships moved in perfect formation toward Kepler Station. Each dreadnought was 3 times larger than the biggest Alliance vessel, bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. All ships report ready, announced Captain Lethera from the communication station. Fleet commanders are standing by for orders. Kate activated the fleet communication channel. Her voice reached 18 different ships scattered throughout the system. This is Lieutenant Commander Morrison. Execute Phase 1. Begin retreat pattern Delta. On the tactical display, Alliance ships started moving away from the advancing Vanguard fleet. The USS Liberty turned and accelerated toward the outer system. Zilani destroyers scattered in different directions. Hegemony cruisers moved behind the station and disappeared from enemy sensors. Admiral HFY watched the display with obvious discomfort. This feels wrong. We are giving them the entire system without firing a shot. That is exactly what we want them to think, Kate replied. She highlighted the Vanguard formation on the screen. Watch their response. They are increasing speed and tightening formation. They believe they have already won. The Vanguard dreadnoughts accelerated toward the station. Their sensors swept the area, tracking the retreating Alliance ships. The mechanical minds calculated pursuit vectors and weapon ranges. Everything was proceeding according to their programming. Kate opened a private channel to the USS Defiance. Captain Brown, how are you doing out there? Looking scared and running. Fast came the reply. 3 Vanguard ships are following me toward the asteroid field. They think I am an easy target. Perfect. Continue retreat for another 10 minutes, then execute Surprise Alpha. Kate switched to another channel. Zilani Squadron, report status. We, appear to be scattered and confused, reported the squadron leader. Vanguard scanners are tracking us as individual targets. They do not see our real formation. Kate smiled as she watched the enemy ships take the bait. The Vanguard were doing exactly what their programming told them to do. They saw disorganized retreat and moved to exploit it. Their tactical computers calculated the most efficient way to destroy scattered enemies. Phase 2 begins in 3 minutes, Kate announced to the fleet. Remember, each ship acts independently once the signal is given. Trust your instincts and do the unexpected. The Vanguard fleet reached the midpoint between their starting position and the station. They had spread out slightly to pursue different groups of Alliance ships. Their formation was still strong, but not as tight as when they started. Now, Kate said quietly into the communication system. The USS Defiance suddenly reversed course and attacked the 3 Vanguard ships that had been chasing it. At the same time, the scattered Zilani destroyers revealed their true positions and struck the enemy flank. Hegemony cruisers emerged from behind the station and opened fire on the surprised Vanguard rear guard. Direct hits on Vanguard lead ships, reported the weapons officer. Enemy formation is breaking apart. Kate watched the enemy response carefully. The Vanguard computers were processing the sudden change in situation. Threat assessments were being recalculated. New tactical options were being evaluated. But the process was taking time. Vanguard ships are rotating to face new threats, called out the sensor operator. They are trying to reform defensive positions. Phase 3, execute now, Kate ordered. Alliance ships that had appeared to be retreating toward the outer system suddenly turned and attacked from completely different angles. The USS Liberty led a charge from behind a moon. Altarian fighters that had been hiding in the asteroid field swarmed the confused Vanguard vessels. The mechanical fleet was caught between multiple attacks coming from directions they had not anticipated. Their computers struggled to process so many simultaneous threats from unexpected vectors. Defensive fire was scattered and ineffective. Vanguard lead ship is taking heavy damage, reported Captain Lithera. Their shields are failing. Kate coordinated the attack from the command center, watching as her strategy unfolded exactly as planned. The Vanguard ships were powerful, but they were designed to fight predictable enemies. Chaos was something their programming could not handle effectively. USS Defiance reports enemy dreadnought destroyed, came the excited voice from the communication system. Repeat, we have killed a Vanguard dreadnought. Cheers erupted in the command center, but Kate remained focused. Continue the attack pattern, do not let them regroup. The battle continued for another hour. Alliance ships struck from unexpected directions, retreated when they should have advanced, and coordinated attacks that made no logical sense to mechanical minds. The Vanguard fleet, designed to counter rational military strategy, found itself unable to adapt to human-inspired chaos. One by one, the massive dreadnoughts fell to the unconventional assault. Their superior weapons and armor could not protect them from attacks they could not predict or understand. The Vanguard computers kept trying to find patterns in the Alliance movements, but the patterns changed constantly. Last enemy ship is retreating, announced the sensor operator. Vanguard fleet is destroyed or dispersed. The command center erupted in celebration. Officers from dozens of species cheered and congratulated each other. Kate stepped back from the command console and watched the joyful chaos around her. Admiral Zeftai approached her with obvious respect in his expression. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, that was the most brilliant tactical display I have ever witnessed. How did you know it would work? Kate looked at the tactical display showing the scattered debris of the Vanguard fleet. Humans have been fighting smart enemies for our entire history. We learned that the best strategy is often the one that makes no sense to anyone else. General Vexathon joined them, his red scales bright with excitement. The Alliance has been fighting the Vanguard for decades with limited success. In one battle, you have shown us how to defeat them completely. It was not just me, Kate replied. Every ship captain in that battle had to make independent decisions under pressure. They trusted the strategy even when it felt wrong. That takes real courage. Chairman Veltar addressed the room. The Alliance owes a great debt to humanity, and to Lieutenant Commander Morrison specifically. I hereby offer her the position of Director of Tactical Innovation for all Alliance forces. Kate nodded formally. I accept the position, sir, but I request permission to establish a joint training program. Human tactics work best when everyone understands the principles behind them. Admiral Zeftai extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. Lieutenant Commander, I apologize for our earlier treatment. We failed to recognize your capabilities. Kate shook his hand firmly. No apology needed, Admiral. Sometimes the best way to prove yourself is to let your actions speak. She looked around the command center at faces that now showed respect instead of dismissal. The woman they had refused a seat had saved them all. More importantly, she had shown the galaxy that human thinking could solve problems that superior technology could not. In the vast cosmos, unpredictability had proven to be humanity's greatest weapon. News of the victory spread quickly through Alliance space. The species that had mocked human primitive weapons now studied human tactical manuals. The soldiers they had dismissed as barbaric were now teaching their most advanced officers. Kate returned to her small quarters on Level 2, but not for long. Within days, she would move to a command suite where she would train the next generation of Alliance officers in the art of human warfare. The galaxy had finally learned what Earth had always known. Sometimes the best strategy is the one nobody expects.